All right, I thought since the other video I did today was a downer, I was gonna do something that's less downerish though. I'm gonna review Joker, which I saw very recently. I didn't get to see it in theaters. I have a feeling I think I would have liked it better if I'd seen it in theaters, but even though I am definitely, spoiler alert, going to be giving this movie a very positive score, uh, if you're a person who's easily fucking triggered by being insulted, you should stop watching here. My the initial reason why I did not go see this movie in theaters is first of all, I don't go out to see movies in theaters very often, and secondly, I had a very negative relationship with a similar movie, not specifically similar, but a similar genre of movie a few years ago. I saw Logan way after all the hoopla last year, and I hated it. Logan is, in fact, a very shitty movie. It's not a movie with no merit. It is a movie that has fun violence, decent grasp of emotion, a good score, pretty good performances from Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart, and it is a piece of shit that is nearly a shot for shot remake of Children of Men. It is one of the most unoriginal rip-off fucking films I've ever seen, and watching it didn't really make me hate the movie because I'd say it's like a low C at the worst. It's not like a bad film. It's just it was hailed to me as the second coming of Christ, and Logan is such an aggressively mediocre movie, which means middle of the road, by the way, not bad. That I had a difficult time being charitable to it. I had to rewatch it and think a little bit more about it and try to take the whole this is a complete and utter ripoff of a far superior film out of my head and just let it be what it is. And I still kind of hate it. But on the film's own merits, individual little parts of filmmaking critiques, I like it. Kind of. It's very hit or miss all in one. So that's Logan. And what is Logan, by the way, folks? Logan is a rated R cape shit movie. Logan is in a genre meant for children and targeted at adults because very childlike, nostalgic, fucking forced adults is most of the movie going public these days. Marvel and shit is meant for children. Children not really any older than 13. And most of the people who love these movies, worship these movies, and go to see these superhero movies, and DC is included in that, are much older than that demo. So part of why Logan is so beloved is because it doesn't insult the audience's intelligence and does in fact expect the audience that is watching it to not be a child. And yes, yeah, a lot of the people who go to see Marvel movies are children, but that's not even close to the majority. Not even fucking close. So when I see Joker, I know exactly what I'm looking at. I'm looking at a superhero movie, which is a child's genre, but that is going to tailor itself towards an adult eye. And I got something pretty similar to Logan. Joker is extremely well shot. The score is not quite as good as Logan's is, but it's still pretty good. But really, what sold me on Joker completely was the color palette. The entire thing looks like a gasoline haze. The entire movie just feels like a ketamine trip. The use of angles and even the aspect ratio is small and in your face. You're uncomfortably close to virtually every character you encounter. The movie is oppressive, and it's not even really oppressive so much in its tone because its tone is all fucking over the place. So to call its tone any one thing would be wrong, and that is a flaw with the movie because the movie jumps tone to tone every minute. But the color palette is very disorienting. And the only tone I could really say it has is oppressive, largely because of the way it's shot. That every character you're like this fucking close to, like you can see all the pores and the fucking imperfections in between my fucking eyes. It's definitely a lot of attention was put in Joaquin Phoenix's performance to make him seem very inhuman. The way he talks, his complete lack of a consistent tone, I believe, was deliberate in the performance. The way he contorts his body and takes every opportunity he can to take off his shirt so you can see how skeletal and inhuman he is. The weird thing about the kind of people who call Joker a sympathetic character is that makes me think that there's an unfortunately high amount of psychopaths amongst us. Joker is not a sympathetic character. He's a character that I feel perfectly capable of feeling pity for and empathizing with his anger. But the character himself, his motivations, his rationalities, and his own kind of morality is nonsense. It's as nonsense as the shit he scribbles in that notebook. He's not. I suppose the whole anti-authoritarian sort of angle that parts of the movie take can be, and especially the movie's themes of isolation. That this movie is very extremely blatant about how isolated and the complete lack of human interaction that Joker's character has, Joaquin Phoenix. That's very clearly expressed in the movie, and that's I guess identifiable. But the character himself almost seems to be more like on a commentary of people emulating things in place of human interaction. That in this internet society, we don't really emulate people. We don't have real role models. We just emulate media, which is bad because our media is dog shit. Our media is terrible, and I'm talking like the music's pretty bad these days. The movies are by and large fucking terrible. The TV shows are cancer, with a few exceptions, few notable exceptions on multiple platforms, which is a nice thing. But the vast majority of shit that's out there is bad. Bad, 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 bad. And a lot of the video games are terrible. And it just seems like what everybody does in their free time, they're just being exposed to mediocrity, very superficial, like everything. Most of what people do here on YouTube is watch fucking rich people open boxes. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that a lot of people identify with Joker because there is an unfortunately large amount of Jokers in society. But the character himself, I struggled to be interested in. I know why I was fascinated by him. That's not the same as being interested in him because I could not tell what he wanted. I didn't really find the whole Thomas Wayne arc that was kind of the filler that padded out the runtime of this movie. And this movie could have very easily been cut down to about an hour 45 feature length. It's 2 hours with about 15 minutes that it doesn't need. And portraying Thomas Wayne, who's been portrayed in most other Batman media as like a very good and virtuous person and a very important to the central hero-ness to Batman, portraying him as a fucking asshole, like an almost like Alec Baldwin playing Trump level of just cartoonish asshole, was bizarre to me, necessitating that part of what makes Joker do shit in this movie is his hatred for Thomas Wayne after being rejected pretty reasonably by Thomas Wayne. Like I didn't give a shit about any of the shit Thomas Wayne did to Joker because Joker is a freak. Clearly. I mean, did we watch the same movie, right? But what Thomas Wayne said on like those news reports and in front of reporters and shit, being so incredibly callous about the populace of Gotham in general, seemed not just overly cruel, but downright stupid for a person who's supposedly highly successful and hyper intelligent. Thomas Wayne just basically directly insulting the audience base is very a basket of deplorables. The 47% of this country is a bunch of lazy freeloaders, Hillary Clinton / Mitt Romney level complete failures of, gaffes, just terrible things to say on camera. I just didn't like that. I didn't really find the whole suit and tie guys. First of all, in Gotham, the rich guys on the shitty subway hitting on a chick while drunk in the middle of the night which is something that you would see more indicative of like street punks, drug addicts, winos, bums might be doing that kind of shit. My dog is apparently coughing up a fucking hairball. Aster, go get some water, you fucking tardo. Sorry about that. That was shit. Now let's talk about, of course, in closing here, what all the shit the movie did well. Every scene of violence worked very well. This movie scared the shit out of me in like a quality horror movie style multiple times. I don't think I've jump scared harder than just when Joker drops the gun out of his pants when he's in the children's cancer ward. That shocked the fucking shit out of me. And part of what, that scene works is, the camera angle slowly panning down and you're paying attention to the top of the screen. You're like looking straight up at Joker dancing around. If you're happy and you know it. And all of a sudden the camera just goes down and bam, just gun. It's like a snake. It's like all of a sudden a snake just fell off the ceiling and landed right in your lap. And you're like, whoa, what the fuck? What the fuck? And even when the movie was not trying to shock me, it still did. Like the scene where he shot the fucking Wall Street punks in the fucking subway. I knew he was going to kill those people. I mean, the trailer basically spoils it. However, I didn't expect it when it happened because of the way it was shot. So the camera work is really what makes this movie function at a much higher level than maybe it should. This movie definitely shows a lot where direction in having a style and understanding the use of angles is what can elevate a movie so much, because Joker is not as good as people say it is at all, and yet it's still very good. I definitely love this movie also for being brave. This is a more subjective interpretation. That there is a lot of paved road that you can choose to follow with Joker. There's even, options, different interpretations that have been taken in comics and in cartoons and games and shit. And for them to really just go for something that really hasn't been done before, to the point where, this movie does draw really close. Like if I said Logan is a Children of Men ripoff, which it is, I wouldn't strictly call Joker a Taxi Driver ripoff, but the influence is incredibly powerful. And if Joker was a ramen, it would be Taxi Driver flavor ramen, okay? It's not really chicken, it's not really shrimp, but you know what it says on the packet, folks. And of course, I would much prefer if this movie had ended just with Joker saying that's life into the camera after shooting Robert De Niro on set. Because I liked that scene. And I liked how brave that scene was, because a lot of people want to say that Joker is an idea, or Joker is a mode of thinking, or Joker is supposed to be funny, or Joker is supposed to be scary, or Joker is supposed to... It's not about money, it's about sending a message. Like, there's all these different ways. And for Joker to just be a selfish person lashing out was interesting, because that's ballsy. Because it is very easy for a critic to look at Joker in that moment and say, you'll get what you fucking deserve, and shoot him just because he feels let down and he feels abused. That's a very vulnerable position to put Joker, who has always been used in media to be like an unstoppable force of nature. Like he even says, in The Dark Knight, this is what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. And it's like, for Joker literally to be a very vulnerable and nervous person. But, Joaquin Phoenix's performance, like, this movie would not succeed at all without Joaquin Phoenix, who, now that Daniel Day-Lewis has retired, I would say is probably one of the best actors working right now. Like, he is the best. Some of the movies I've seen him in, controversial ones like You Were Never Really Here, absolute masterful tour de force godsend films like The Master. He's amazing. And I would often say, like, oh, dude, if Joaquin Phoenix is in this, it can't be bad. But then I saw Tom Hardy in Venom and went, well, Tom Hardy, another, at least top 10, if not top 5 actor guy right now, couldn't make this movie not a complete piece of fucking shit. I'm not willing to say that actors alone can save films. And keep in mind, the guy who directed this movie, which I think direction is probably the strongest part of Joker, was the guy who directed The Hangover, which is, I'd say, a decently directed film, but not necessarily a good film. I mean, direction's not really what's wrong with The Hangover. It's the script. And I can also tell you that most of what's wrong with Joker is in the script. It's not in the execution. Joker's an example of an extremely talented actor with a very talented director and cinematography guy specifically, working with a low budget and focusing in on character over spectacle. Even though this movie has no shortage whatsoever of spectacle, but a lot of the spectacle is just costume choice. A lot of the spectacle is just how little violence is in this movie and yet how exceedingly graphic the violence is when it appears. And you know it's coming most, if not all, of the time it happens. And a lot of people who do criticize this movie say that predictability is part of why they dislike it. And I say that I like it in spite of its predictability. And in fact, that's part of what works against cape shit in general, is that these are formulaic, patterned out movies. They're cookie cutter to the core, and this film is an example of how difficult it is to actually break the mold. I don't believe that Joker fully succeeded in breaking the mold, but where it cracked it damn fucking good. Joaquin was utterly magnetic. I haven't seen an actor so in mastery of his facial expression performance since Christian Bale in American Psycho. Ironically, another Batman affiliated actor. Remember Christian Bale said that his portrayal of Patrick Bateman was very much centered on his ability to smile and to emote with the lower half of his face while not smiling with his eyes. There was a lot of that with Joaquin Phoenix, but he didn't play a sociopath. You could see tremendous moments of fear, anxiety, shame, terror, and grief, absolute fucking grief in Joaquin Phoenix. And it almost seemed like really the way I let the movie work. And I don't even know necessarily if this was intended or if anybody else is really going to see it this way. But he was a character who was very clearly in touch with sadness, loneliness, despair, fear, resentment. But I didn't see, even as violent as he had been in multiple points in the film, what you're seeing is a character who, like, when you first see him shoot the Wall Street guys, it's kind of self-defense. And a lot of the violence that he initiates in the film is not inexcusable until he stabs his former coworker with the fucking scissors. The level of violence that he's visiting is far in excess of doing it out of self-preservation or to keep somebody from talking. Because keep in mind, when he kills the fuck out of that coworker, that coworker hadn't been particularly mean to him. Kind of was, not completely. By the way, I loved seeing that guy. That was a guy who played one of the villains in a very good HBO series called True Detective. The guy who was the coworker who gave him the gun in the first place. He was just being vicious. And if you thought, well, he killed him because he thought he would talk, well, he let the midget go. So it wasn't that. That was him getting in contact with the last emotion he really had left to feel, rage. And even after all of that, even though he had sort of gone from a character with very little to no identity to a character who was starting to realize who he really is, and that's definitely in Joaquin's performance, the way he dances, the way his posture changes, and you could see it very deliberate in Joaquin Phoenix's performance, that the way he sits in the talk show scene, the way he enters the talk show scene, he's a character who has developed confidence, but it's still very new to him. So you can see the anxiety in him. And I love that about the performance. It's very, again, kind of brave because portraying Joker is anything other than a singularly focused uh, animal that does not experience fear. Um, was an interesting choice, and what I did like is that it's very clear that despite him getting this new confidence and in the movie, the subtext of when he's monologuing to people, he's saying like, "I exist. I actually exist now. Like, I didn't ever think I was real, and now I'm real." He still intends to kill himself, and it's almost like he comes to this realization that he doesn't hate himself, and he doesn't want to kill himself like out of any of his negative emotions. He wants to kill himself to punish the audience. And then he realizes, because the other interesting thing about this performance, this is one of the last few things I'll say, is this Joker's not an intelligent person at all. Normally, if anything, even out of all the many interpretations of Joker, he's not, to my knowledge, ever really been portrayed as an idiot. The number one word I would use to describe this Joker, besides freak, is idiot. He's a moron. He's a fucking dumbass. His success is so based on luck that it's fascinating. That he, making him a fully reactive creature who's a product of his environment, more so than the product of really anything particularly transformative at all. Just the movie was like a series of accidents, and it was like watching a car crash in slow motion in a good way. And at the end, I was smiling and I loved it. I did think, and I just want to return to this point, last thing, that the movie should have ended with the culmination of the talk show scene. The whole gratuitous riot crowd rescuing him from the cop car thing was dumb. It was dumb. A lot of this movie was dumb. The thing with the fake girlfriend that was padded for filler, and then they insult the audience's intelligence by showing she was actually never there in any of those scenes, even when I guessed that by like the second scene she was in. I've seen too much shit like Beautiful Mind and The Sixth Sense and Fight Club. I know when I'm being told something in subtext, the lack of other characters communicating with the black chick, the way he just kind of randomly arrives at her apartment, the lack of real interaction between them. They just kind of are just immediately in an intimate situation, and it's literally just because she was one of the first people to ever smile to him and just talk to him like a normal guy instead of ignore him and cross the street to get away from him. That could have been told so much better without you insulting us going, "Ooh, what the twist? What the twist?" No, just let me grasp for a second when she says, "What are you doing here? My daughter's in the other room. I need you to leave." That's all that needed to happen. And I wouldn't have fixated on the unnecessariness of that delusion in the plot. It's completely unnecessary. I wouldn't have fixated on it at all, and I wouldn't have held it against the movie, but then you wasted my time for 30 seconds telling me something I already knew and, in fact, already figured out 45 minutes ago. Fuck you. Was it Todd Phillips? I forget. You got to forgive me for forgetting the guy who directed this, but if he's responsible for that, or if it was the studio, if that was Warner Brothers, whoever it was, kill yourselves. Don't do that to me ever. I'm not a cape shit slug, okay? In conclusion, this movie is high art for people whose usual movie-going experience is the Fast and the Furious, films that are starred by The Rock, or Jason Statham, or Vin Diesel. People who go mostly to see Marvel and Star Wars and other Disney products, Disney cartoons, princess shit, and they don't watch any drama. There's so many people who go like, "Oh, I don't like drama and shit," and then they see drama and they go, "Ooh, drama, good, I like drama." And I'm like, you realize you can get this in way purer form and just inject it straight into your veins. We got 100 years of it. A lot of it, most of it, in fact, is phenomenal. I could recommend you anything from indie shit, low budget shit, high budget shit. I could give you psychological suspense thriller type shit. I could give you cop dramas. I could give you horror movies that are more psychological than they are jump scare shit. I can give you every kind of drama you want. I can give you tearjerker shit. I can give you cop thriller shit. Like, you don't have to accept mass-produced hostess cake fucking all sugar and flour and fucking fluff cape shit. You can have real melodrama, folks. You're allowed to have it. You can allot yourself something other than mass appeal bullshit. I even like most of the Marvel movies, and I still resent the fuck out of their success because we could have had Logan and Joker 2 decades ago. You could have more of this at any time, because the constant fallacy and embarrassing lack of foresight that these Marvel movies don't seem to get is you can spend $250 million on Iron Man, and most people will like it, and a lot of people will love it. Or you could spend what? Maybe 60, 70 million, probably not even close to that much on Joker, make $1 billion in profit in fucking world market. Everybody fucking loves it. It's one of the best reviewed fucking superhero bullshit fucking films of all time. And the only people who hate it are fucking political hacks masquerading as film critics. You could have had this. There's this complete bullshit lie that things have to be PG-13 to sell. That's not true. That's never been true. Rated R movies my entire childhood were marketed to me until around 1997 when the entire world decided to go full pussification mode. A lot of people think this crybaby soy PC bullshit is an invention of the last 5 years. Try last 15 to 25. Folks, this has never been necessary. Jurassic Park, rated R. Terminator, rated R. Rambo, rated R. RoboCop, rated R. Kids eat that shit up for breakfast and they buy the fucking toys. And guess what? They weren't all school shooters. They weren't all fucking loners or lunatics or autists or weirdos. And I think this infantilization of fucking male characters and shit and this over-reliance on comedy and cape shit, that almost every cape shit is a comedy with like a complete disrespect to the stakes of the film, and it's all just supposed to be gleeful roller coaster shit instead of any kind of emotion or aspect. You know, like if anybody actually grasped what was going on in Ultron, they would see what a tonal fucking mess Avengers 2 was. It was a piece of dog shit. Avengers Endgame is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I hold it as not a whole lot better than The Last Jedi. I was deeply offended that somebody could pull off such an unbelievable stunt as Infinity War and make it work well, and then do what a fucking catastrophic, fucking sad wet fart Endgame was. I was like, Jesus Christ, what a fucking 180. Well, look, Joker is flawed. It's way more flawed than anybody wants to admit. It's not revolutionary in the fucking slightest. But it looks good. It feels good. It's legitimately scary. I am capable of taking it seriously, even though a lot of scenes in the movie are very forced. They're forced, but a lot of people say they're not believable. No, they are. A lot of people who don't believe the violence and cruelty in this film have never been to a big city. Especially a big city outside of the United States, where the big cities are quite fucking safe in comparison to the rest of the world. Fuck off. I can believe the cruelty. I just don't like the way it was used. Like most scenes I like, it was Joaquin Phoenix basically alone on screen, just being him, because almost all of his interactions seemed too by the numbers. Like everything had to happen just beat by beat, and nothing really felt natural. Or I'd say a lot of it, actually. Of course, not all of it. It just didn't feel natural. And yet, at the end of the day, I finished that movie with a big smile on my face. I didn't think about Taxi Driver until shortly before I made this video. So it wasn't too referential or too derivative is the word I'm looking for. It's not derivative like Logan's derivative. It's not cheap with the emotions. It's brave with having a main character who absolutely dominates almost every second of this film. There's barely a second of this movie he's not in the frame. It's incredibly focused on him, and he is incredibly watchable and magnetic. And you have to thank the Hangover director guy, who's, I'm sorry, I probably fucked up his name, and you have to thank Joaquin Phoenix, because this film would not work without them at all. The script is a kind of a junker, not the worst thing I've ever seen, but this movie had a lot going against it, and I like it better than a lot of movies that are like this. I felt like this movie kind of had a little bit of a feel that was very similar to Blade Runner 2049, which is made by, in my opinion, one of the best directors working in Hollywood today, Denis Villeneuve. I kind of don't like the Blade Runner property, so maybe that colors my opinion a little bit. But I would say Joker is better than Blade Runner 2049, and Blade Runner 2049 is up for a bunch of awards, and Joker is better than that movie by a country mile. Not in every way, but in a lot of ways, and they're not necessarily the same genre, but they had the same feel of isolationism and society's mean to the main character, and the main character goes through an arc that redefines himself internally rather than externally, and Joker does it better than that movie, and I like that movie. So look, if I try to move away from giving numbers anymore, but everybody loves to hear a number. A Joker's very solid 8. B. 8. I could, if you asked me to move in one direction or another and say, oh, come on, isn't it really a 9? I'd say it's a lot closer to a 7, to be honest with you. It is a very flawed movie. Okay, it's too long with not a whole lot of key story beats in it. So it's a little bit stretched unnecessarily. This movie could have been 90 minutes even, and it could have just been a whirlwind rush of shit, and it would have probably worked better for it. The script is kind of shit. The score is good in some places and bad in others. It's a little, like a lot of this movie, tonally inconsistent. And I was fascinated that a character who was very unlikable. And again, I would hold it against you if you thought the Joker was like a cool guy, or you thought he was any kind of thing to either idolize or even emulate, or, you know, even, God forbid, just identify with. I thought I was watching a movie about a freak, a subhuman freak, like an alien. And I loved it for that. I would worry about yourself if you identified with him much beyond the whole loneliness and trouble with parents type thing. Because the rest of the shit he does was mental ward rubber room shit. But real talk, folks. Like, you may want to get a therapist. Anyway, thanks for watching. Yeah, 8. I like this movie quite a lot. I went into this movie with very, I wouldn't say low expectations. I was afraid it was going to suck, and that I was going to be let down, because Logan was a big fucking letdown after all the hype. And I gotta say that Joker just about comes kind of close. Doesn't live up to the hype, but close. It's good. It's way, way better than everything else that came out last year. 2019 was a dog shit year. But anyway, I've been rambling too long. Thanks for watching.